with that, I will turn it over to Regan to welcome us all and begin.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for this evening. So we are going to be presenting, I think it's called A Case for Inclusive Language. Correct, Robin? Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I was saying the correct title. And we have Robin Linkhart, and she is supporting the presentation this week through Harmony. And she'll go a little bit more in detail about Harmony. And so today there are going to be some times where we're able to share. So just again, be mindful, like Troy said, if you want to share in the chat box, or there'll be time to unmute and share as well. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box during the presentation, so I can help support during there as well. So yeah, without further ado, here is Robin.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to be sharing my screen here, so just give me a second to get that all clicked up and ready to roll, and then we will start. So you'll see the topic tonight is the case for inclusive language with Parker Johnson, who's the president of Harmony, but Parker was called away for a family emergency. And so I am stepping in on Parker's behalf this evening. And I do want to introduce you to Parker if you don't know him. So we're going to proceed with his intro. And along the way, I will share about me. So Parker is the president of Harmony. He's a lifelong member of Community of Christ. He was born and raised in rural Oklahoma, USA. He relocated to Canada in 2016 with his husband, Preston, and Parker is a marketing communications consultant. My name is Robin Linkhart, and I too am a lifelong member of Community of Christ. I was born in Southern California. My dad was career military, so we moved 19 times my first 20 years of life. The first time we moved was when I was 6 weeks old, and we moved to Alaska. I currently live in Longmont, Colorado with my husband. We have 4 kids, 2 grandkids, and they're spread across the US. I serve in the Council of 12 Apostles in the USA. I am the team lead for USA Apostles, and my field is the North Central USA mission field. I have visited both East and West Canada, and I am filled with joy to be with you and share it with you again. It is always such a delight when I visit Canada and spend time with sisters and brothers there. So I'm really delighted that I can step in for Parker tonight. Parker and Preston, as Parker says in this slide, most importantly, they have 2 miniature dachshunds named Walter and Amelia, and they are like their children, and they're just precious. So we're going to start off with a trivia game. And so Regan, I'm going to count on you and Troy to monitor the chat. And there'll be some questions, so I'll give a little time if you want to pop a response into the chat, or if you want to unmute and respond verbally, that's fine too. Or if you just want to, on a piece of paper, kind of jot down your responses just for you to see, that's fine too. So anything works for me. So our first question is, what does LGBTQIA2S+ acronym stand for? Anybody want to answer? Are you seeing anything in the chat there, Regan?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll give you a few more seconds and then I'll give you the answer. And of course, if you're jotting that down for yourself, you can just check out your accuracy. So LGBTQIA2S+ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, two-spirit, and other countless affirmative ways in which people choose to self-identify. The next question is, what is the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation? Anybody want to venture a response there? As we go through this trivia, I just want you to know there's no shame or judgment with any of this. We are all learning together. And as much as I have been an active advocate and walk with Harmony really closely the last couple of years, I got to tell you, I learned things all the time. And just briefing for the presentation tonight, I learned a couple of things. So we're learning together. Any responses on this?
We don't have one in the chat, but oh, we do have one. So gender identity, so how you express yourself on the gender spectrum to the world. And then I'm wondering if the other part of it is coming. But then I guess I'll take a stab at it too. So sexual orientation is what you, I guess, like prefer to engage with. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Sexual orientation, who and how you love.
Sounds good. So according to the Human Rights Campaign, sexual orientation is defined as an inherent or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. So how you feel. And gender identity is one's innermost concept of self as male, female, a blend of both, or neither. So how individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves. So one's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth. Alrighty, next question. What does the SOGI acronym stand for? What does SOGI acronym stand for? SOGI. What it stands for was not new to me, but I was not familiar with SOGI prior to learning that yesterday. Any takers on that one?
Robin, I'm wondering, because some folks are on a phone and it takes a long time to type it out, are they okay to unmute and just share verbally?
Yeah, sure. Unmute's great.
So there is one in the chat, sexual orientation, gender identity.
Yes, absolutely right. Yay. Next one, what is the difference between the terms welcoming and affirming? What's the difference between welcoming and affirming? And it's perfectly fine to unmute if you want to speak verbally, audibly. So I'm not hearing anything. So welcoming is you are welcome to join us. In other words, it's fine for you to come to church and we won't be outwardly mean to you, but we may still be praying for you to leave that lifestyle so God will love you too. And in the LGBTQ plus community, this carries with it a discriminatory undercurrent. Affirming, we see you, respect you, we recognize that you are equally loved by God, regardless of who you love or how you identify, sexual orientation, gender identity. And we invite you and your family to fully participate, including serving in clergy, leadership, sacraments, and so on. All right. In what year did Community of Christ adopt affirming policies? This is the last question. What year did Community of Christ adopt affirming policies? This one's a little bit complicated. Anyone?
We have a 2014 question mark.
Okay. Any others?
We have a response that says it hasn't across the globe, only specific countries.
Yes, that's exactly right. So this is a little bit of a trick question. Australia in 2013 for ordination, 2018 for marriage. British Isles 2014, Canada, yay Canada, 2013, Germany 2019, the Netherlands 2017, Norway 2017, United States 2014, and Western Europe Mission Center in 2019 actually approved for a total of 38 nations there in that one Mission Center conference. So we need to be aware that we have affirming policies. However, that does not necessarily mean that we have affirming congregations and mission centers. A policy change is the appropriate first step, and we celebrate that everywhere that has happened. But action is also required through diversity and inclusion seminars, sensitivity trainings, Harmony's welcoming and affirming congregation programs, all kinds of things that we can do to fully live into becoming affirming in our whole lives, and of course in the context of our church and congregational life. So thank you for playing our trivia game. I hope you had a little bit of fun with that. And I hope, like me, I hope you learned some things in it. So why are we here tonight? From the hymn For Everyone Born, which has become a beloved among Community of Christ, the line, God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. God will delight. So as we explore the case for inclusive language, we are seeking to do exactly that. In being here tonight, you are pledging to extend compassion, support, celebration, and affirmation of every individual you encounter in the world from here on out. We know this is a journey of learning and becoming, but just stepping out and saying, I will try to do this is a big thing. And it's a beautiful thing. And we're so glad that you are here. Taking the time to learn more about inclusivity doesn't just pave the way for benefits in the distant future with just a few individuals here and there. So trust me when I say you will notice an immediate benefit and blessing to your own life as you pave the way for others who will ultimately begin modeling your behavior and language. So with that, on behalf of Harmony, thank you for being here today. So let's get started with, first, we're going to talk a little bit about Harmony, and then we're going to dive into the deep end of our content tonight. What is Harmony? Harmony is a registered charity in the state of Missouri. We are a completely separate organization from Community of Christ. In 2019, GALA, Gay and Lesbian Acceptance, merged with WCN, Welcoming Community Network, to form what is now called Harmony. The organization, GALA WCN, has been around since the 1980s and has been very instrumental in helping our denomination explore what it means to be fully inclusive. Harmony provides advocacy, education, and resources for queer voices in Community of Christ with a shared vision of full participation. So we put an asterisk after queer voices because some members of the LGBTQIA2S+ community are not comfortable with the term queer, as it was used as a slur when they were younger, and this is understandably hurtful for them. Alternatively, some people strictly identify as queer or don't identify at all within the LGBTQIA2S+ acronym, and therefore feel more comfortable with the umbrella term queer. Because of this, the term queer has been used as an umbrella term to capture the entire acronym without forcing anyone into being a plus sign. The phrase full participation in the life of the church pertains to all members without exception, ensuring that each person is fully eligible to participate in the sacraments, in priesthood, in all levels of church leadership, as well as any other benefits and responsibilities guaranteed to church membership according to the Community of Christ membership manual. So why should you care about harmony? Well, one of the main reasons our church is as welcoming and affirming as it is directly connected to the work of harmony. Members in the past have been removed from priesthood, ostracized in congregations, denied communion, and in many other ways excluded from the life of the church. And we are very well aware that there are many places in the church yet today that struggle with these challenges and issues and oppression. Thankfully, they had the courage to tell their stories and change the heart of the church. So we had many people on this journey who had these experiences, and they were willing to share their story, even before we had a national conference in any place in the church. Now, I'm here today, and Parker is sorry he can't be here, but he, as an openly queer person and former church employee, and myself as a lifelong Community of Christ member, fully recognize that we stand on the shoulders of giants who came before us, and that all the work we do now could not be done without those who came before. If you would like to read more about these stories, we want to tell you about 2 books. Harmony has helped to publish 2 books. One is called Touched by Grace, and the other one is called Homosexual Saints. And both of those are on the topic of queer LGBTQ inclusion and the journey towards inclusion. You can find both of those on Amazon.com. And Troy, if you happen to have those links, if you could pop those in the chat at some point, that would help me out quite a bit. So both of those books were really instrumental in telling the LGBTQIA2S+ stories of individuals in the Community of Christ denomination. And there are people outside of our faith movement that read those books and benefit from them as well. Our mission is to ensure that the future of Community of Christ is a fully inclusive one. We're working with church leaders at all levels, pastors, mission center presidents, mission center leaders, apostles, the First Presidency, to ensure that everyone has the tools they need to make the most informed decisions they can. So what do we offer? What does Harmony offer? We offer welcoming and affirming program that people can participate in, Pride event support, which has been great this month of June, the Pride month, peer and family support, community support, congregational support, spiritual companionship. Sacred Pause began during the pandemic and has been a wonderful supporting place, safe space for worship and sharing together, as well as advocacy, education, and other resources. If you would like to join Harmony, you can do that at I'm going to put all these links in after the presentation, but you can do that at joinit.org/o/harmony. The website for Harmony, and you can connect with everything else if you go there, www.harmony.lgbt. On Facebook, you can find us at the Harmony page, the Harmony table, and Harmony Family Support. And Sacred Pause, that wonderful worship service, happens the last Monday of every month, and you can find a link to that at harmony.lgbt. It's scheduled for the last Monday of the month. Occasionally, when that kind of interferes with holiday time, they'll rearrange it to another Monday, but you can pretty much count on that last Monday of the month. And we had an amazing Pride worship this last Monday. So a little bit about programs. We have two categories of programs: member support. We are a membership-driven organization. Currently, we have over 200 members from 7 countries and 25 states. And we also offer many membership levels, like a family membership, student memberships, and we also have scholarships. Congregation support. We have resources to support becoming a welcoming and affirming congregation. Lots of multi-denominational resources, some of which Community of Christ helped write, and inclusivity at harmony.lgbt can offer some additional information. So with the merger of Gala and WCN, we created these two programs, which kind of become an umbrella program to represent what each of these organizations have done in the past. And so that's how we have the two tracks: membership support and congregation support. And although many of our members are also members of Community of Christ, you don't need to be a member of Community of Christ to be part of Harmony. And that's been a real joy for us as other people, some people exploring Community of Christ and not yet members, and others just wanting to find a safe place to journey with others have been with us. Since 2009, Harmony has tended to the flowers surrounding the temple grounds as a ministry of presence. So I want to share this short video of some of our Kansas City area volunteers taking part in the planting. We are really blessed by some of the most amazing volunteers and members. So you can follow us at www.harmony.lgbt, and you can follow us on social media for more information at Harmony LGBTQ. If you would like to support future events like this one, consider joining Harmony. And you can visit, as I said, at joinit.org/o/harmony to learn more. And don't forget, scholarships are available. We don't want funding to be a block or barrier for anyone. So now we're going to jump into the deep end of the case for inclusive language. So I'm just going to breeze through a little bit of a glossary, some key terms and concepts before we move to the next slide. We've already looked at a couple of these. Welcoming, you are welcome to join us. Affirming, we see you, respect you, and invite you to fully participate. SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity. LGBTQIA2S+, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, two-spirit, and of course, plus the countless affirmative ways in which people choose to self-identify. Queer, a term people often use to express a spectrum of identities and orientations that are counter to the mainstream. Queer is often used as a catch-all to include many people, including those who do not identify as exclusively straight and/or folks who have non-binary or gender expansive identities. This term was previously used as a slur, but has been reclaimed by many parts of the LGBTQ movement. Community of Christ National Conference approach. In 2013, Community of Christ First Presidency authorized the use of national conferences to discern and debate policy pertaining to the issue of queer LGBTQIA2S+ inclusion in the church. That was actually authorized through Doctrine and Covenants scripture in 2010, and it took a few years for us to get ready to have those first national conferences. This was thought to be the most appropriate considering the social and political concerns surrounding queer issues around the world. We now have 42 nations that have held such conferences and recommended affirming policy changes to the first presidency. So this is a screenshot of a handout that you can get at harmony.lgbt. It's called the Gender Bread Person, and I will try to see if I can get that in the chat, but I don't know if I can. Let me see here. Sometimes the cut and paste does not work, so I might have to enter this. But I tried really hard to try to see if I could do this. It happened. So if you want to pull that up now and take a peek at it, you can. And this will really help out with some key terms and how they're used. So you can view it and print it off if that helps. And I invite you to use that later on in order to first understand the concept of queer LGBTQ inclusion. We have to understand the basis for the terms themselves. Since we only have a short time tonight, I'm going to ask you to take some time after this workshop to move through the worksheet on your own. It's really fun and it's super informative. You can fill it out and really think through what your own responses would be for yourself. This can be a private exercise you do alone at home, or it can be a group effort if you'd like. It could be interesting to hear what others' impressions are based on how you present to them. It would at least start a very good and healthy dialogue. So the main reason that we want to share this document is that it helps to segment the types of language that we're going to discuss based on identity, attraction, sex, and expression. So that'll be a handy tool for you after the workshop tonight. So Christian perspective. So we aren't just looking at the science tonight, we're also looking at the water in which we swim, Community of Christ. We swim in the water of Christianity. In his book, The Nonviolent God, on page 24, J. Denny Weaver writes about the character of God in the Jesus whose life we have modeled our mission, initiatives, and our enduring principles after. And Denny Weaver says that God is present in the life of Jesus means that the fulfillment of the reign of God involves people, their relationships to each other, and the form of their structures on earth and in human history. N.T. Wright wrote that death is the ultimate weapon of the tyrant. Resurrection overcomes death, and thereby is the ultimate affirmation that creation matters, that embodied human beings matter. That is why resurrection has always had an inescapable political meaning. So what non-traditional traits have you experienced the divine through? As you think about that a little bit, L. Juliana M. Claessens discusses in her book, Mourner, Mother, Midwife, that there is a wealth of often overlooked diversity in God's delivering presence through the Old Testament as well. Some include terms like liberator, mourner, mother, midwife, comforter. As such, it is our mandate as Christians to wholeheartedly accept and celebrate complexities in human diversity as all are expressions of a God that is bigger than any human language or understanding. This is what it means to be made in God's image. God's beautiful diversity is reflected back to us through creation, God's diverse creation. So when we think about queer inclusion and look to scriptures, a great place to start is scriptural references in Community of Christ on the topic of queer LGBTQ in the Doctrine and Covenants. So here we have section 165 3D, be not consumed with concern about variety in human types and characteristics as you see them. Be passionately concerned about forming inclusive communities of love, oneness, and equality that reveal divine nature. So now we're going to have a video to walk us through some basics on the pronouns.
We asked some people in our community a simple question. What will you teach the world? Here's Tristan from the Pride Center of Edmonton.
I'd like to teach people about gender identity and how to use pronouns correctly. First off, let's talk about the difference between sex and gender identity. Sex is something that is assigned at birth. When the medical professional says, "It's a boy," or "It's a girl," they are basing this off of your physical anatomy, or your sex. Gender identity is a person's experience of their own gender. Most people's gender identity aligns with the sex they were assigned at birth. The term for this is cisgender, from the Latin cis, meaning on this side of. Someone who is transgender, or gender non-binary, however, has a gender identity that does not align with the sex they were assigned at birth. Transgender and non-binary people can experience their gender in a variety of ways. Some transgender people may identify strongly with a gender. Some may feel disconnected from masculine and feminine genders, while others may experience their gender as a combination of both. Here's a quick refresher on grammar. Pronouns are words we use to refer to someone in place of a name. Some are tied to a specific gender, like he, him, his, and she, her, hers. Others, like they, them, theirs, are gender neutral. Some transgender people will use gendered pronouns as they affirm their gender identity. However, some transgender and gender non-binary folks will use gender-neutral pronouns. It's important to consider that the pronouns that feel comfortable for one person might not be for another. Okay, so why is this important? You probably have an expectation about what pronouns people refer to you by, and so do most transgender or gender non-binary people. Using someone's pronouns correctly is important because pronouns correspond with a person's gender. When pronouns are used incorrectly, we may risk misgendering them. Misgendering is when someone uses the wrong name or pronoun to describe someone else. This can cause distress for the person who is misgendered because they may feel that their gender identity is not validated and respected. Misgendering can also create a risk to someone's safety by outing that person to others. Unfortunately, some people purposely misgender others to insult them. Using the correct name and pronoun is about showing basic respect. If you're not sure, you can just ask. A great way to ask someone's pronoun when you first meet them is to say your name, state your pronouns, then ask the person you're meeting with what their name and pronouns are. Hi, my name is Tristan. I use he, him, his pronouns. What is your name and pronouns? Hi, my name is Jordan, and I use they, them, theirs pronouns. Thank you for asking. Once you know someone's pronouns, you will know how to refer to them when speaking to others. Hey everyone, this is Jordan. They're a new friend of mine. We all make mistakes though. If you slip up, apologize, and try to avoid being defensive. Hey everyone, this is Jordan. He's a new friend of mine. Oh, I mean, they're a new friend of mine. Sorry, Jordan. No worries, thanks. Getting someone's gender right is on you, not the transgender or non-binary person. Try not to make assumptions about someone's gender identity. You don't know someone's pronouns until they tell you. Pronouns are something important that most people don't think about. However, pronouns are extra important to many transgender and non-binary folks as it affirms their gender identity. Using someone's correct pronouns is important and validating. It's easy to get it right if you avoid making assumptions. In the end, this all comes down to treating each other with a little care and respect.
Sacred specificity. At Harmony, we've coined the term sacred specificity, and that's to signify the importance of being public, intentional, and explicit about inclusion. So a question we can ask ourselves is, do I speak with sacred specificity? Do we, as a community, a faith community, speak with sacred specificity? And perhaps most importantly, does Community of Christ as a denomination speak with sacred specificity? Did you know that the words inclusion and inclusivity have never been published in Community of Christ's Doctrine and Covenants? Did you know the words racism and racist have never been published in Community of Christ's Doctrine and Covenants? Did you know diversity was not mentioned in the sense of inclusion until Prophet President Grant McMurray challenged us in Doctrine and Covenants 161-6a in 1996? Did you know the words sex, sexual, sexuality, gender identity were not mentioned in Community of Christ Doctrine and Covenants until 2010 in section 164, counsel given to the church and approved for inclusion in the Doctrine and Covenants by Prophet President Steve Beasy? Did you know that other experiences not mentioned include colonialism, equity, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, bigotry, patriarchy? And yet, justice is mentioned close to 30 times. Peace is mentioned over 100 times. Zion is mentioned close to 300 times. Who are we really? If Zion is defined as the kingdom of God on earth, then shouldn't we be openly and fervently condemning racism, bigotry, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, while simultaneously preaching inclusivity, peace, love, welcome, and diversity in our sacred texts? We aren't being specific enough. We aren't being specific enough. While we have some control over what is and is not canonized into Community of Christ Doctrine and Covenants, it is complicated due to our faith tradition's global, very diverse presence. It is certainly not impossible to use this language, and we should strive to encourage our leadership to incorporate this language in a way that's both sensitive to the lived experiences of members living around the world and also affirming to those who really need to hear it, perhaps those that need to hear it the most. But denominational books of scripture aside, we do have control right here in our congregations and in our mission centers to be as public, intentional, and explicit as we can. So to all the guys, gals, and non-binary pals, let's be specific. Be specific in all that you do, in all that you publish, in all that you say, in all that you preach. Be so specific that when you intentionally incorporate inclusive language into your sermon, that the closeted teen in the back row who is half listening looks up at you and grins. Be so specific that when you openly and readily condemn acts rooted in racism from the pulpit, that a person of color in the room feels safe enough to finally exhale. Be so specific that when a trans visitor attends your congregation for the very first time, they look around the room and see a sanctuary filled with disciples already wearing name tags with their preferred pronouns. Be so specific that when you refer to a longtime member of your congregation who's in the midst of gender transition by their preferred name and pronouns, that they weep on the way home, feeling overcome by love, welcome, and dignity. Be so specific that when a young couple visits your congregation, you refrain from asking them if they plan to have children, not knowing they are struggling with infertility. Be so specific that when business meetings roll around, you insist that positions of influence are filled by people from diverse backgrounds and lived experiences. Be so specific that your congregation's biggest budget item is diversity and inclusion trainings, workshops, and other education opportunities. Be so specific that your very existence in your community is seen as a safe haven to the marginalized. Who are we becoming? In a society that's swung so far right that we are glorifying the opposition of political correctness, God is calling us to respond with persistent love. Honoring someone's feelings is not weak. Affirming someone's identity is not a political statement. Acknowledging someone's lived experience that is vastly different from our own is not unpatriotic. Looking back in time, church members have repeatedly experienced the same scenario in different contexts. Since the Spirit of God, like a fire is burning, was penned by W.W. Phelps in the 1800s, our church has been prayerfully asking God to open our minds and hearts. We've been begging for disruption. The Lord is extending his saints' understanding, restoring their judges, and all as at first. The knowledge and power of God are expanding. The veil or the earth is beginning to burst. The knowledge and power of God are expanding. Y'all, we are not saying that God's getting smarter and more powerful. We're saying and singing that our understanding about the divine, their character, our relationship with them, how we serve them is changing. We asked for this. We wanted to know better so we could do better. And here we are, a prayer answered. In the last few years, we've also added the mission prayer. God, where will your Spirit lead today? Help me be fully awake and ready to respond. Grant me the courage to risk something new and become a blessing of your love and peace. Amen. And we pray that every day. Our opportunity is here and now at the local level. This is a lifelong challenge to constantly discern. It isn't just about paying for the person's coffee behind you in line. That's nice, and feeling good about it. That's good. It isn't just about giving someone your spare change and using that story in your disciples' generous response remarks. It's about widespread systemic change that we can do together in order that Zion can actually come about, not just for people like you and me, but for all of God's diverse creation. So a gap has formed between who we say we are as a faith community and how we live that out, particularly in the area of minority inclusion. So let me be clear when I say this. We have some really beautiful scriptures and lovely intentions, but the generalized manner in which our scriptures and policies are written at times maintains a status quo of ambiguity in lieu of sacred specificity. With such broadly written statements in scripture and policy, many minorities are simply hoping church members interpret such statements in a favorable way. The church's national conference approach to queer LGBTQ inclusion has been a major success in allowing our faith community to move forward in this area. However, in most areas, this has resulted in confusion. We now have a fractured understanding of the worth of all persons that's contingent upon a geographic location or what passport you hold, and a theoretical ceiling that could prohibit queer LGBTQ disciples from moving into more prominent international roles. Acknowledging the gap is not an admission of malicious intent by any party at all. Rather, it's an opportunity for us to continuously improve and to acknowledge that progress can be a messy process. So now what? What should we do with the knowledge we have? Share it. Contact your leaders. Invite them for a virtual coffee or tea, and as things open up, face-to-face coffee or tea, and have some dialogue on the subject. Learn about the complexities that they feel and what might be holding them back from taking a more specific approach. Perhaps there is a fear of losing members, contributors, or even violence. Invite them into sacred specificity, acknowledging their fears and ensuring they know you are supporting them. So, inclusive language with intentionality and empathy. We're asking that you sign our pledge to use language that includes all people regardless of their gender identity. Signing indicates that you will use gender inclusive language in your daily life, including in church. You are encouraged to take the pledge, stating that you will be more gender inclusive with your language and work to create spaces, policies, and laws that ensure all genders feel welcome, safe, and included. And as the video indicates, we are going to make mistakes, but it's important to remember that getting someone's gender right is on you. It's on us. We own that responsibility. And it's a process of learning and becoming. So I'll post a link in the chat for the forms for that statement. So resources for you. We have glossary of terms. We'll make sure you have all this information. Human Rights Campaign is a great place to start. The Genderbread Person Handout, Safe Zone Project, Understanding Pronouns. You can learn more at LGBT Life Center. And I would encourage you to check out Parker Johnson's 2018 seminary capstone entitled Community of Christ, Scriptural Journey to LGBT+ Inclusion. Parker was a great student in seminary, and he did a fabulous job on that capstone project. So we're at the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and my understanding is Regan, you and or others are going to facilitate the process of Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin, for sharing. There was a lot that I learned throughout it, and I hope that you guys learned it as well, you folks. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. There is an option on the bottom right of your screen that says raise hand, so you can raise your hand to ask, or if you'd like, you can also just write in the chat, and I will facilitate and ask that question. Now Robin has linked some of those links in the chat, and I've been kind of compiling a couple of other links throughout the session, so I will send that out as well to all of our participants. It will have the link to the Harmony page, the membership page, the books, and everything, so we'll have it all there for you folks. Actually, I'll start off the Q&A if that's okay. I have a quick question. So is there kind of a stepping stone or a good first step for maybe those who are interested in, bringing a program like this into their congregation, or kind of how they would go about that? Would you be able to speak to that a bit?
Sure. We work with an ecumenical resource called Building an Inclusive Church. And we actually had a presence on the team that wrote that. It was an ecumenical project, and it's being housed and sponsored by the Lutheran Church now. And I'll put that link in. And it has an amazing resource that actually walks a congregation through a process. And it begins with getting to know each other, understanding where your congregation is on becoming affirming, inclusive, of wanting to be an advocate for education in their community and an advocate for LGBTQ plus inclusion community-wide. Lots of different avenues in that process. And it has different phases, from preparing to consider actually becoming a welcoming congregation where you're listed on an international registry. So you're out as being affirming and welcoming. But the process that it takes a congregation through, I think no matter where a congregation is, draws them deeper into understanding. And it also helps us see how becoming fully affirming and inclusive means that the leadership, the roles of congregational life are filled by the full spectrum of people resident in our congregation. I love it. It's really a great resource. So let me go out and get that online. Also, if you check in with Harmony, we have people ready to walk with the congregation and train your congregation on the resource. It starts by identifying a couple key people in your congregation that want to be in the team that's going to help the congregation take this journey. So Harmony has people standing by to walk with your congregation and help you do that.
Awesome. That is really great. I'm happy that we can look into that, because I know I'm just thinking about my congregation in general. I'm in the Stratford congregation, and I'm sure that's something that we would definitely be interested in looking into. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah,
happy to share that. We have portions of that translated into French. It's available in English only. I was doing some training in French Polynesian, so when I did that, their translators were really helpful. So we have big chunks of it available in French, if that is anything that you might need. And I put the link to that.
Awesome, thank you. Carrie, you have your hand raised on the thing?
Yes, I do. So I have had 2 letters from within our mission center from people who identify, and I won't use the word queer because they don't identify with that term, but with the LGBT plus community. And I'm wondering what other terminology was considered beyond the word queer.
So the word queer is not Harmony specific. That is a word that's been reclaimed by the LGBTQ community at large. And with younger generations, it's been empowering to them to reclaim that and to redefine queer as something that can be an umbrella term to be inclusive without having the acronym and the plus to represent things that aren't named. So that was an evolving process among a large group of diverse persons intrinsic to that population. We fully recognize though, and Harmony has struggled with this because queer is from very hurtful to traumatizing to triggering to uncomfortable for people, especially older generations, because that word was used in very derogatory, oppressive ways. So if you want to learn more about that, there are some really great books about queer theology, actually. Let me try to grab that right now, that are super helpful in kind of understanding that process and the dynamics behind that reclaiming of the word. But I certainly advocate for not using that term with folks who feel harmed or uncomfortable about it. It's not anything that Harmony is trying to push on people, but it's a term that Harmony upholds as one that many people find beneficial and helpful, but certainly not everyone is in that camp. And even in Harmony, we've had some really big bumps in the road as we have used that. So let me put this book link. It's called.
Thank you. These individuals themselves are, as you say, in an older generation, so not identifying with the 20-something or whatever. Yeah.
So my advice, and I'm certainly not an expert, but to understand how people themselves prefer, what nomenclature they prefer, and to honor that and use it with them and be respectful of that. And then I think it's helpful to help all of us understand the lived experience of others. So maybe referencing this book and having some background on how that word came to be reclaimed and why could be helpful to build bridges of understanding between the different experiences and pathways.
Thank you. I think that book would be helpful because I personally would feel awkward using that term given the communications I receive from some others.
Absolutely. Beverly.
Sorry, I couldn't find the little hand. I didn't know where it was. My boss, I work at the library here in Shelburne. My boss, she has a partner who is one of the lawyers for the International Olympic Committee, working on getting the acceptance and the issues surrounding the various people that are, I don't know what the term is. The old term, which I think is completely pejorative now, is the old term hermaphrodite, which they're born with both sexual characteristics of both male and female. Mm-hmm. So he's been working on the acceptance, how they're going to deal with it with the committees. I think he's the head lawyer dealing with that. The interesting thing, we sat beside each other at a wedding of a coworker a couple of years ago, and he was saying that the majority of the people born with that condition are usually in very high altitude countries. And and I thought, you know, there's proof positive that it's genetic. It's in those cases where they're born, potentially lack of oxygen to the mother at certain stages of the pregnancy. Who knows what actual factors? But I thought that was just, you know, again, more proof that it is definitely something that it's inherent to the human. It's in the DNA.
Thanks, Beverly. Anybody else have any questions or any reflections or things you want to share with each other?
I just wanted to say, just while we've been on this Zoom meeting, I just had a nice little reconnection through Messenger, if you saw me looking down at my phone. But my friend Kaden, who some of you might know, was messaging me some questions, which was just really kind of, I don't want to use the word, I don't know what word it is, like, what's the word? Not fluky, but like, you know, I can't think of the word, but they are messaging me while I'm on this Zoom thing. And Kaden was probably my first friend that used pronouns of they, them. And it was a real learning curve. So for me, but it was a really nice to get my brain going and to have those conversations and to learn these things and to get used to using those pronouns. It was kind of empowering even for me. And I know it's not about me, it was about them, but it was just, I don't know, just a really good experience. So for those of you who have not encountered using those pronouns with someone, it'll be okay. Like it's new and it's not new for them. It's new for us. I don't know how to explain this. I just found it really a great experience. And I just thought it was very interesting that they messaged me, and I haven't talked to them for a very long time. And I'm just like, hey, I'm on a Harmony Zoom. And they're like, oh, wow. So it was just kind of cool.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Nancy. I call that divine synchronicity. And it really, I love that you're sharing that experience because it underscores and it's so helpful for one another to affirm. It does feel different, and we worry about we're going to make a mistake and hurt someone's feelings, but just you sharing that we can do this, and it's clear that that was a deeply meaningful experience for you, and that your relationship with Kaden is such that you wanted to be part of that journey with them. Thank you.
Mary, I see you have your hand raised.
I had a question about the pronouns. I don't understand. What would it mean if they said they, them?
So some people have a non-binary identification of gender, and they feel like they have both male and female, or they feel like they don't really identify with any gender at all. So it's a way for people to use a pronoun that helps name who they feel they are, which goes beyond our normative binary either or, one or the other. That's just kind of a high level explanation. I find that I get deeper meaning when I hear the stories of people who choose the pronouns they, them, theirs, and they talk about the fluidity of their experience of gender, or even the absence of a sense of gender, and they, them, theirs can be helpful and meaningful to them in that regard.
Thank you.
Sure.
Emma, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, sorry, I'm on my phone and I'm not used to this. My question was just that sometimes when I have been venturing into asking people their pronouns, making that more of a normal part of our experience, oftentimes you're met with uncomfortable humor about it. And I know that humor is coming from people who are uncomfortable themselves and they don't mean any offense by it, but I can see where there could be immense offense taken by their flippancy towards it. Do you have any experience with that, or any suggestions for how to navigate a situation like that?
That's a really good question. And I think it's a really hard question too, because those types of dynamics really requires some deep understanding of the culture and context. So I'm going to assume that wherever you are, you have a pretty good understanding of what's happening. And you have to kind of read the situation. In other words, sometimes it's baby steps towards a deeper understanding. And for people to, I find it helpful myself to identify with people that feel uncomfortable and just say, you know, we are in the midst of a steep learning curve of understanding gender and affirmative practices and supporting one another on this journey of LGBTQIA+. And it can be hard and overwhelming. And so it's helpful to just name that it feels uncomfortable, and then share about how meaningful it is for a lot of people to use pronouns that they identify with. And the only way for us to know is to open space for people to share with us what their preferred pronouns are. I don't think there's a one right way to approach that. Side by side, for me, side by side is always much better, so that people feel supported and their discomfort can be named, and in a way that kind of helps feel better that they're not the only one that's feeling uncomfortable. And in other situations, depending on how well you know the people, just to say how, you know, making light or quasi joking or laughing can, even though it's a symptom or a result of their awkward feelings or uncomfortableness, that even that can be harmful to people, and to offer to be supportive with them and for them as they learn, as we all are learning together. But again, there's no one right way. And I really applaud, Emma, that you want to be part of helping all of us learn and get better at this, because that's half the journey right there, just wanting to help others understand. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Robin.
So I think we'll just give it another minute or two for questions as they're kind of slowly going down. So if you do have a burning question, feel free to raise your hand or ask in the chat, and we can definitely ask Robin. But if not, I'll kind of have a little ending remark. And I just want to say thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so much, Robin, for stepping in and presenting to us. It's been really eye-opening, and I've learned a lot, so I'm sure you all have too. And I think this just really helps us, you know, kickstart that conversation and to keep it going. You know, we've learned so much here, so let's, you know, take it out to our different congregations and to even our friends outside the church, and just to, again, continue that conversation and keep it going. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed it. I'm going to be emailing a follow-up email for you all for the links that I've been sharing in the chat throughout it. So keep an eye out for that. It'll have the books, and I have the genderbread person in there and everything. So all of those links will be in a file that will be emailed to you all.
Thank you, Regan, and thanks all of you for having me. It's been great to share with you. And just to follow up on Emma's questions, you know, education, even little handouts that help people understand things are so helpful. So I do hope that you all follow up with sharing with your congregations and others that you know in your community, as we all learn together how to fully embrace what it means to be affirming and inclusive and welcoming. Thanks again, everyone.